Welcome back to another Friday of This Business of Therapy. That was more chilled out than I meant it to sound. Not that I want anxious. But anyway, so yeah, we'll jump right into it. Updates, thoughts from the week, business development, all that fun stuff. So today is Friday, July 26th, 2024. This week for me, full of a lot of family time and local family time. So being out of town the last couple weeks and then local family time, which has adjusted my week in a lot of ways. So I find family to be important. I think for a lot of business, some of it's like, what's the point without, if I didn't have any family, I would absolutely be probably still working hard and trying to create new family, so to speak, friends and new relationships. But people are the purpose of all of this business. A big part of life is to be neighborly and peopleful. So yeah, I'll take time for that. It's always a balance to figure out how much to set aside and how much time to take, but that's been important. And this week was just extra full of it. Hopefully, not hopefully, next week and the week after and the week after that will be a little bit more wound down, and I'll be prioritizing a little bit more time on work and other things and projects that need done. So there's a time for everything. This week was more family oriented, including a full day off for me to be with family, and a lot of extra time just spent with people there. So that's important for me. That's going to be pretty clear, I think, over time, if it isn't already, that's a big part of business development for me is family development, that this isn't done in isolation of people I care about. And there's a lot of people that are really successful in business and very unsuccessful and empty in a lot of other parts of their lives. So that's not my definition of success. Success is holistic and encompasses other things, not just money and not just business success. So it's a full word for me, and I will take the time to make sure I can fulfill it in all those categories. So the other piece, something I've been doing this week, is rereading the book of Proverbs, which I think for anyone who's a business owner or wants to be a business owner, that is a fantastic book to read. It's one that I don't hear recommended very often, and I know, me being a very small YouTube channel and as your big millionaires go, I'm not one of them. So I don't know how far that recommendation goes, but I will say, as someone who does have a six-figure business, that is something that is so grounding. And I'm a religious person, and that's gonna land differently for me. But in terms of general wisdom and things to glean from that book, it is fantastic. It is short. It's 31 chapters, and if you know anything about the Bible, chapters are often short. Audio book is like 90 minutes long, but it's one of the best books on business you can read, and it's very timely, and it just speaks so much into advice on how to interact with people, money, and just overall wisdom. It's fantastic, and I get something new every time. I don't know how many times I've read it now, but I've almost certainly read that book more than any other book. Just in general, that's what I read more than anything, I think. It's a fantastic book, and there's always something good to glean from it. So I've been rereading that. I got a couple more pages, about 8 more pages of that to do, hopefully tonight or tomorrow, and get that run through done again. And it's not for the purpose of just a run through. It's to get more from it, as it always offers. So I encourage that to anyone. If you're stuck in business, to give that a read and just see how it talks about interacting with people in the world around you. It can shift your interactions with everything. So strong recommendation there. And then website. I think I talked a little bit last week about the website updates. If I remember slight ones, I'm looking at my notes from last week. And if I didn't, website for sure. Big updates there. So officially now have the website posted as an under construction. So the description of this video is going to have the link to the new website, ryanmillershow.com. Going back through and changing all the other videos to have that link as well to the website. If you go there now, it's going to say currently under construction or something like that. And we'll be working on that over probably the next couple weeks, maybe a couple months. It is intended to be a bit of a hub site, so everything related to this channel kind of culminating into that space. It might have my notes that I have for these videos and more detailed stuff on the Monday musings, maybe more detailed book reviews. There's going to be a bit of a trial and error for how I want that to look. But it will also be a link to the therapy services and business consultation services, and it'll kind of be the hub for three major sources: this site, therapy, and consultation. The latter of two will probably have breakout sites to go to, or at the very least resource pages separate to them. So there's also an intention to make that website resource dense, hopefully not overwhelming, and I'll have to work on balancing that out, but to be just useful. Like it to be fun as well, but useful and have tools on that. And that's something I'll try to announce in these videos as those tools launch and as the resources expand overall. But there's no official timeline on that. Getting it up and running and getting the domains and website situated that I want to took a little bit longer than it probably should have. Hit a couple tiny hurdles, but that might be put on the back burner for a couple weeks while I get back onto some other projects that need done. So I'm excited for that, and again, it's under construction and more to come for that, so that'll be good. Clinically speaking, clinical growth from a business perspective, the majority of that work for me has been on the business trainings that I've been doing from a clinical lens. So these are trainings designed for clinicians, primarily therapists, not exclusively to them, but it's probably going to be the most helpful to therapists and clinicians. These have been really fun, and that's the most recent one I did on emergency absences and contingency plans and the ethics of how to be absent from work and caring for your clients was there. The next one's going to be financial planning on a business and personal level and how those integrate and why they're necessary as separate things: business finances, personal finances, but how they are not disconnected either. And oftentimes that your mindset in one is probably going to transition to the other, and even some question marks on when do you separate those out. So that training I'm doing in 3 weeks, I think, August 7th or 8th, whatever that Wednesday is. And I'm excited for that one. A lot of work to still do on that, and that's going to be training 2 of 11. And that's pretty exciting for me, working on these training series. So it'll take me about a year to get them done as first solid drafts, like presentable drafts, and then probably a couple more years to refine them out the way that I want to. But maybe not. So I think that refining process can look a lot of different ways, and we're going to be likely trial running them with different audiences. And I'm excited, to say the least, about that. A little bit nervous. It's a cool step forward, but that's something that I believe is important for growth, is taking a step into something that's a little nerve-wracking and a little scary. That's kind of a balancing act of, you don't want to get too comfortable or too familiar with what you're doing because you stagnate. So the idea of, like, if you always know what you're doing, are you in a growth state still? Because there should always be something that you're like, I'm not sure about this, let me figure it out, and you're learning more in the process. And this is one of those things for me, is I'm not sure how this is going to look, and that makes it fun. And nerve-wracking is probably a better word. It's not really scary, it's just I got to get it done because I'm passionate about it, and I've made some commitments to people, and I think it's going to be really helpful and really good. So working on these 11 trainings, and I'll be excited to get those done with their first cycle over the course of a year and fully launched into its own thing, whatever that forms into. I've heard you're not supposed to take a drink. I'm not going to cut that out, but we're drinking sparkling water while we're doing this. So clinically speaking, also working on more reading, trying to integrate more self-study education right now, and books are one of the best ways to do that. YouTube lectures are also a fantastic way there's lots of, so many courses online. Coursera has free courses, MIT has free courses, Harvard has free courses. You can just go do it. You just don't get certifications for free, but you get all the learning. So education's a big deal. And so wanting to get on a better habit of doing the book discussions, if you followed the channel up to now, there's been one book review and discussion. I plan to change that over the next couple weeks. I have 2 more on deck, so to speak, and I brought them, and they're here. So spoiler alert for those. We got this one, Sigmund Freud's An Outline of Psychoanalysis. That will be the next one. Potentially as early as next week. We will see schedule-wise as I get through it, or how much I stop to take notes and things like that. After that one, we're doing this I and Thou by Martin Buber. So Freud, of course, psychoanalysis, early psych clinical work, and Martin Buber is a little bit more, he's classical as well, more on the existential, religious, philosophical side. Not necessarily therapy reads so much as input into the field as I remember. And he's got a couple concepts that I really liked, and getting to expand on those with this book, which is one of his, I don't know if like bigger books is the right language, but this is the one that if you're in school for therapy and you get a recommendation to read his work, it's probably going to be this. Probably not this for Freud, but definitely this. Most people would probably know The Interpretation of Dreams by Freud, and then a couple of niche ones that, people like to comment on and stuff like that. But those will be the next 2 ones over the next coming weeks. And I'm pretty stoked about getting to read up on these 2 topics. The I Am Thou book I've wanted to read for about 4 years now. I just haven't made the time for it. I've only owned it for about a year, but prior to that I just didn't make the time. And then the Freud one is a recommendation that I took from Jordan Peterson's recommendations for clinical reading, and I'm slowly working my way through his recommendations as well, because I believe him to be the smartest living psychologist today, and really value a lot of his clinical input on what would be considered valuable reading, as well as me being leaning towards existential thought. I'm not an existential therapist, but leaning towards that direction for personal development and how that integrates into clinical work. I'm all for it. Existential, philosophical, religious, and how that ties into a lot of my primary push of meaning, belief systems, identity. They're pretty intertwined, though I wouldn't quite say I'm an existential therapist. I will probably develop more into that over time and potentially change the language of what I would describe myself as. So lastly is media. Or no, actually 2 things. Media is a big one. This video being one. If you watched on Monday, the lighting was a bit different. The set was a little bit different, the design. This is probably going to be the background that we're working with for a while now. It's a home office. My 4 nature settings, which in the last video you could not see winter, but winter is making an appearance. There's going to be a lot of experimenting with video quality and style over the coming weeks, getting out everything I have that can boost these. So right now lighting is a big one, working on sound, a couple microphones just from old stuff that I'm trying to work with. This old guy here from an old camera system that I think needs a new battery, and then a more advanced, looks like toner brand mic. I'm looking at it now to see if that one can get me anywhere. And a lot of trial and error. So meeting with a couple people hopefully in the next couple weeks to get some input and recommendation on how to improve the overall production quality of these, and have just a lot more fun with that. Thumbnails as well, updating all of those instead of the YouTube default ones, trying to actually create my own, which has been fun. And that ties into my next thought, which is employees as a business owner. My profit margins are low as it goes in terms of being able to hire. And it's one of those things where I probably could hire someone to help with something. I think social media makes the most sense in terms of amount of work I have to put in. However, it is the least profitable thing that I do. And by least profitable, I mean I've made a grand total of $0 doing this. So, and with equipment, I'm in the red. So that's pretty cool. And that's something that needs a lot more work to potentially bring in revenue, although it's not the reason I do this. It'd be helpful to have someone there. What would help me on the revenue front, though, would be hiring an administrative assistant to help run the consultation business and the clinical practice, fielding emails, phone calls, scheduling, all these things to expedite my process of getting people what they need, whether that's the service with me or referred out or answering questions, taking care of logistical things. That would probably be the best use of my money to free me up to do more of that work and potentially supplement the income with more clinical hours worked. The issue is, I think at best I could afford someone part-time, and I think even paying someone $20,000 a year would be really tough for me at the moment. So it would cause a big hit to lose that. And that's just kind of the reality of private practice work, and not all small businesses like that, but the therapy business is a lot of the dollars go right to the therapist and then our expenses, and our work is the face-to-face work with clients. And that's true for the business consulting side too, and the ethics of how you price things is a little bit different for the two fields. But ultimately, I'm not like a grocery store where I'm going to have, or even a small business where I can afford maybe one or two employees as a storefront. And as a business that really doesn't have any need for loans or capital, I'm not a fan of taking out loans. I'm a big fan of cash flowing everything and being a zero debt company to the best of my ability, which a lot of people don't agree with, but I think that's, as far as I can tell, the wisest route to go. And as I said before, business and personal is full cash flow, ideally from your own pocket versus funding. And maybe with some exceptions if you're a company that runs on donations. My work could be that way if I did some nonprofit work where people donated money, which is a fantastic thing, and I know people that do that, and it's a really cool approach. It's not the way that I do it. And so there just isn't a lot left over, and at this point it would just be taking loans out to hire someone, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of months to years to see what that looks like, is where you take the step to hire someone, when does it make sense, how to do that in a way that is ethical. I have a very strong belief of not hiring anyone unless you can pay them a livable wage. And even if you're only hiring them for like 5 hours a week for something, that 5 hours needs to be equivalent to a livable wage if they were working in that 32 to 40 hour range. So if I hire someone for 5 hours a week, I don't feel like I need to pay them $70,000 a year, but probably the equivalent of 5 hours worth of that. And I believe 70,000 to be the more livable, which I know is a way above average. But when you think about families and what people need, it's nice. 70,000 makes sense to me for most areas, for most people, to just take care of yourself and be okay enough. And even more than that is probably needed for a lot of families nowadays. So I don't want to lowball people. I want anyone that I hire, to feel like it's a really good trade for them in a financial sense, and hopefully a good trade in partnering in a business way as an employee or contractor, and in the experience they get, and hopefully in the relational dynamic that I could offer. But for sure the financial offer needs to be good, and we're not at the point where that makes sense. So at least not on a full scale, but it is something I do consider, is hiring someone for just a couple hours a week in a contractor way. And really the only thing that gets in the way of that mentally is I don't want to ask someone to split their attention and give a half-hearted job to this and something else. So a lot of that is just ongoing curiosity, informal interviews. I know that for a lot of businesses, you'll hear people talk about the first hire that they get is kind of make or break for the business, because you spend a lot of money on a hire pulling someone in, and that's not something I'm interested in doing poorly and watching my business crash. Because the reality is, honestly, with how my money comes in and out, my business won't go away. My family will just hurt financially, because there really isn't a lot left over. I don't have a lot of overhead for my business necessarily. Like I said before, I have a low six-figure business, and a fair amount of that goes to expenses, and then a lot of it goes to family. So trying to manage all that is just interesting, and it's fun overall. I don't stress about it. But just some thoughts on employee and early starting out. And I mean, I guess I'm not early. Been running this business for 4 years now. So just thoughts. And that's where I am this week. Overall, I'd say it's relatively less productive than I would want, but given everything that I knew I had planned and what was going on, it makes sense. Today has just been a slog because I did not get enough sleep last night. Went to bed late, got up early, and did not sleep well. And I usually prioritize sleep a lot, so I actually took like 2 short naps today, and it's just kind of just powering through. So not getting as much done, but this is good nonetheless. So thank you all for tuning into this one. I'm excited to see what I have to offer for next week. Hopefully some good updates. These are definitely really good. Keep me accountable for what I'm learning in business and just making progress and getting stuff done. So yeah, thank you all, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy your weekend. If you're interested in any business consulting or even what that would look like for me, contact is in the description, as well as a link to the websites to reach out and get connected. And yeah, I love talking with people. Feel free to leave comments and hit me up on email and let me know where you're at and have a conversation. So I'll see y'all soon. Bye.